go ahead and get started. Thanks, Chessa, for recording that. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for our informational webinar on the Outreach and Technical Assistance 2024 grant, or as a lot of you know this program as TA, insert the year. And this year is going to be TA 2024. I am Kenesha Reynolds. I serve as the Director of Conservation Programs here with NACD. And with my team, we oversee all our conservation grant portfolio, which includes this Outreach and Technical Assistance grant. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Chessa Osifort. And if you've had a previous TA grant with us, it's very possible that you've had some conversations with Chessa. Chessa has been working really closely on our technical assistance grant. And Chessa currently serves as our program manager. So a couple housekeeping items before we go forward. We're asking everyone just to keep your mics muted, and that's just to minimize the background noise. We will provide an opportunity at the end to unmute and to ask any questions or to provide any comments that you might have. But in the meantime, feel free to add your questions to the chat as we're going along, if that's your preference, and we'll get to those questions at the end as well. As you can see, we are recording this webinar and we'll post it to our website. We'll make sure that we add the website to the chat before we get off this webinar. And you'll see it again in the presentation, but we will add this recording to our TA 2024 website, which already has a lot of information. Thanks, Chessa, for adding that to the chat. If you go to our TA 2024 page, you'll see a lot of information there, including the request for proposal. And again, that's where we'll add the recording for this webinar, but also the PowerPoint that we're using for this webinar will be posted there as well. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and get into the details of this program. So today we're just going to walk through the overview of the program. Some of you are very much familiar with this program. There might be others who are not familiar. So we'll just talk about the program and the goal of the program. We'll talk about some eligibility requirements and activities and how funds can be used under this program. And then we'll walk you through this application process, which we do have a new grant management portal that we're going to use this year for our applications. So Chessa, when we get to that point, we'll share screen and walk through Grant Vantage with you all so you can see how to submit your application. And then at the end, we'll leave some time for questions and for discussion or for your comments. Next slide, Chessa. Thank you. So for those of you who are probably not familiar with this program, the Outreach and Technical Assistant Grant it's a partnership that we have between NACD and NRCS. And this was put in place in 2017, and we've been having our TA grants grant funding since 2017. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of you might have had a previous TA grant with us. But this program, again, has been in place since 2017. And the grant is really to help to strengthen the local conservation delivery system and to help to strengthen the partnership that we have with NRCS. And the goal is for us to use this grant or leverage this grant to address critical service or capacity concern or priority concerns within each state or territory. The bottom line here is this is really to help to better serve our clients who would benefit from conservation technical assistance or support, conservation practices on the ground, and to get more of those practices on the ground. So that's the bottom line of this grant program here. So the main objectives of the technical assistance grant program, one is to address conservation issues on private lands, and this includes conducting outreach, making sure that we're reaching out to new clients or clients who probably have not been served in this program before. It could be through providing education, but critically, it's also through technical assistance that is needed to get these conservation practices on the ground. Another objective of this program is to increase enrollment in NRCS programs with a intentional focus on making sure that we're increasing the number of new producers, as I said before, or underserved producers who have not participated in this program before or other NRCS programs. So that's a priority for both NRCS, but it's also a key priority for us at NACD as well. As you've heard us said a lot of times, that every acre, it's important that we reach every acre. So the TA program provides both EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentive Programs, CSB, the Conservation Stewardship Program, and CODA, Conservation Operations Technical Assistance funding. Chesa, if you could go one slide back, that would be helpful. Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. And again, as I mentioned, the goal here is to advance, increase enrollment or to advance NRCS programs. And then the final objective here is to increase or to create new opportunities for civic engagement. And an example of that could be strengthening the local working groups. Next slide, Chesa. So this year, we're really excited because we have $18 million that we will provide in award, and that's an increase from previous years. I know last year we had 15, and some of our grantees kept asking about potential increase. So this year, we're excited to share that we do have an increase in our TA funding. So we have about $18 million that we would be awarding this year. And as I mentioned, again, this funding is really to advance NRCS programs. And these dollars in the TA program, they're intended to fund EQIP, CSP, and CODA. In terms of match requirement, this has been in place since this TA project started back in 2017. So this is not new, that all applicants are required to provide 20% match. And that is 20%. I do apologize for that, 20% match. And that's 20% off the award. Next slide, Chesa. Thank you. So who's eligible to apply for this program? Our conservation districts, our state and territory association of conservation districts, the conservation districts, respective state agencies. So that could be our State Department of Ag or State Department of Natural Resource, as long as there is a conservation district engaged at the local level. Resource conservation and development councils and Indian tribal governments and intertribal consortia are all eligible to apply for this program. Funding in this program can be used to provide technical assistance to landowners or operators, can be used to conduct outreach or to advance education and stewardship. And this could include, providing technical assistance for conservation planning, enrolling new producers, or enrolling producers in EQIP and CSP, or just supporting the whole process from design all the way through certification of getting conservation practices on the ground. So if you look in the RFP, once you get a chance to go through the RFP, there's more details there on eligibility requirements, what's allowed, what's not allowed in terms of use of funding. So take some time and dig into that as you're putting together your application. One thing I want to highlight this year, which is different from previous years, we are not requiring a letter of concurrence or letter of approval from state leadership prior to applying for this grant. So if you've applied before, you would be required to get a letter of concurrence or letter of approval from state leaders. And the idea here is for us to remove any redundancies, because we do require a letter of approval or a letter of concurrence at the on the back end. So after the revision of applications have taken place. And so we're trying to remove any redundancies, any additional steps that could take time away from this proposal process. So this is a way for us to help to streamline a little bit and to make it, to speed the process up a little bit. But I just want to caution, because this grant is really to address priority concerns or needs within the state or the territory. We highly, highly recommend that you are consulting with NRCS or your state associations before, sorry, I had to click something off my screen, before you submit your application. And that's really important because, as I mentioned before, you will still need a letter of concurrence on the back end. And so please don't just submit a proposal without consulting with or communicating with your NRCS or your state associations. As I mentioned before, we're doing, just if you could back it up one more, I just want to say just a couple more things on this slide and then we'll move forward. As I mentioned before, we have some changes in this process this year. In addition to not requiring the letter of concurrence, this year we're providing more of an opportunity for applicants to be working together more closely with your state leadership team. And the state leader team, they're going to be the ones to review the application. And in this process, they're going to be providing recommendations for any revisions that they see necessary to both the technical approach or your scope of work, as well as to the budgets. And so you'll be working back and forth with them to make sure that you're addressing all their concerns. And then once they are comfortable with the changes that have been made, they will send us a letter of concurrence, a letter of approval. So again, just highlighting the importance of having these conversations upfront, even though a letter is not required upfront. In terms of our timeline, our applications are due September 30th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. This is important to keep in mind because with this new grant system, it doesn't allow for any late application to snuck into the batch. It will automatically stop stop any applications beyond that point. So just keep that in mind, that September 30th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern is the absolute deadline for this program. And we're hoping to move through this process as quickly as possible in the review process. Any back and forth on necessary revisions to budget or scope. And tentatively, we hope to announce or to reach out to applicants who we will be awarding these projects early December. I know it probably is an ambitious timeline, but we want to make sure that we have agreements in place before the end of the calendar year. Next slide, Chessa. All right, so this is not new if you have a TA 2023 or if you've applied to our TA 23 requests for proposals. NRCS and NACD are really committed to advancing environmental justice and equity. And in order for us to accomplish this, we are, as in NACD, we're really committed to incorporating and implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion in all of our programs. And we're working closely with NRCS to achieve these equitable outcomes across the locally led conservation delivery system. That said, with this program, you are required to do two things here, as you can see on the screen. In order to be eligible, you have to participate in our annual demographic survey, meaning you have to respond to that survey that's sent to you semi-annually. And that just gives us data, which will protect your data. We're not providing individual data to reporting that out to others, but it helps us to tell a story. What we've heard from grantees, especially who were at our annual meeting, is help us to get more money in this program because it's really helpful. We need to be able to tell that story to help to get the money. And so that is a requirement. And in our grant system, when you're going through the application, and Chessa will show you that when she opens the portal, you have to certify that, one, you will participate in the semi-annual survey, demographic survey, but also you have to either one or the other. So develop or implement a board succession plan that is inclusive, and it provides opportunities for new diverse voices to participate in mentorship or board development opportunities. Or, so that's the first one, a board succession plan, or develop or implement a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that advances environmental and social justice, both within your organization, your entity, and the community. So again, this is an eligibility requirement. And if you do not certify that you will be in compliance, the system will not allow you to move forward with the application. So just wanted to stress that. All right, Chessa, next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we do have a new grant management system, which is this new online portal where you will be submitting your applications. I'm going to pass it off to Chessa to walk you through this portal, but we did include screenshots of step-by-step process of the application in the system. And that is, if you just want a quick refresher as you're going through the application process, you can just refer back to this PowerPoint and you'll see screenshot walking you through how to apply. And then after Chessa finishes the demonstration or just walking you through the portal, then I'll provide some more details on the evaluation criteria. But just wanting to highlight again that within the RFP, you'll find so much more details than what we're providing in this webinar. Chessa, do you want to go ahead?
Are you seeing my browser now, Kanisha?
I am. I'm seeing
Okay.
our 24 technical assistance. Yes.
So from the TA 2024 page, you're going to be able to click on this grant portal and application, and it will bring you to our Grant Vantage page. You'll be able to view the RFP by clicking on view, and that will give you the same PDF that is already available on our website. But to get started with the actual application, you're going to go up to login. It's going to get what should give you an option if you're not signed in to create a login if you haven't already registered, or to sign into your previous one. To start an application, once you're signed in, you can go to view. Up here in the top left, it's going to give you the option to apply or resume if you've started an application. If you have an application already in the system, it will show here. The system will only allow you to have one application per RFP at any given time. So you will be able to click resume in this box that's not showing right now, or to delete an application. Today, we're just going to start a new application. You'll name your application however you want to. It doesn't matter to us what you name it. I don't believe we even see that. And there's going to be a lot of pop-up windows. Read them carefully. Sometimes it's asking you to make sure that you actually do want to submit or change something. There's a lot of fail-safe options in this system. And this brings you to the actual application. Up here in the top left, you're going to see your save, finish later, and these reports will show you what you've already submitted or saved. And this is your navigation window. Shows you everything that's in the application. So if you want to jump around and do different sections of it and split the process with someone else in your office, you have that option. And just start here. You can flip through each section using these navigation windows of the category or the question options. It's going to give you how much you've completed of this as a percentage. And your next option to actually submit will not allow you to show until you've reached 100% and you've certified all the questions. Like Kanisha mentioned, you have to certify that you'll do a DEI plan. You have to have a budget submitted, or it won't let you submit your full application. There is an option, just as a fail safe again, when you get into the questions on the budget, it's going to ask you if you've completed your project budget. If the budget template up here doesn't have a green check mark next to it, you have not submitted your budget template. In the budget, these little drop downs will give you all the different categories under each of the funding options. You're going to need to complete each of these that you want. So if you want to just do equip, you'll only put funding into this first equip category. Just like in the old Excel sheet, you're going to put your match amounts in here. The leveraged category is if you have other federal funding that you can't count as matched towards this program, but you want us to know you have it out there. So if you have another contribution working agreement with NRCS to do something similar, you could put that in the leveraged column. I'm just going to put some numbers in here, maybe not 56 cents, but you get the idea. And then you'll hit save in the top right. If you need to go back and edit these numbers, to be able to do that, you have to hit return to draft. Then you can open these drop downs again and the option to edit will be there. There's also instructions here on how to complete the budget and what goes into each category. These are the same instructions that are available in the RFP. As you can see, it turns green up here in the top when I've completed my budget, and I'm able to say, yes, I have completed this. I'm going to jump down to the summary of the environmental or social outcomes. Here's where your outcome for the inclusion plan or DEI plan is. If you're willing to certify that you're going to do that, you can select that option. And then the next one is if you have a plan already in place, you can select the option to commit to reviewing your plan and actually provide us a copy of the plan that you wrote previously. This is particularly important if you have a TA23 agreement. You can add that plan here. Some of the questions have this box that says show instruction. This will give you more details on where to find the instructions for that question. Or if there's really in-depth, elaborate information that we wanted you to remember, we've included that in that box, just for a quick reference. We'll get down to the end. Your staff hours. It lets me jump that far. Project staffing here. There should be a table in here somewhere. It's going to let you add your staffing. These numbers can be decimals. We're basing number of staff up off of 2,080 hours per year. You can enter a partial position here. If you're going to hire someone that's part-time, that can go here. Like I said, this is where you would find your information on that. And once you hit 100%, it's not going to let me. You'll be able to hit next and submit your application. Or if you want to see what you entered, you hit the report option. I'm going to hit finish later so you can see how to get back to it. Once you log in, you're back to this main screen. You're going to hit view and then resume. And you can just hit resume again. The same thing will happen if you submit an application and we bounce it back to you because there was information missing. You'll follow the same process to resume, or you can delete. Again, with the pop-ups, many pop-ups, delete an application. You'll have to close out of this window to get a new window for application. I think that's a really quick overview. The great part about this system is we'll be able to roll everything you submit into our post-award process, and you'll be able to see live budget updates down the road if you're awarded a grant. Nisha, I'm going to toss it back to you for eligibility.
Thanks, Jessa. I know we have a lot of, oh, cute dog.
Oh, sure.
If you get back to the PowerPoint, then we'll just skip through all the screenshots and get to the eligibility.
Okay.
I'm still seeing your cute dog on the screen,
Yeah.
Jessa.
I paused sharing, but here we go.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jessa. All right, I just want to say that I know we went through really quickly. When you open the portal and you're starting to do your applications, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We do have our contact information that we'll provide, so feel free to reach out if you're having any hiccups as you're going through the system. It is a new system, so we do understand that. You might need some time to fully understand how to walk through it and answer all the questions appropriately. All right, so in the RFP again, please do take some time to read the RFP. It has all these details. We're going through this really quickly. We do want to leave some time at the end for questions, but your application will be evaluated on a couple criteria that you can see on this screen here. The first one, which you can see is 40 points of the 100 points, is looking at your alignment to local conservation priorities and needs. This is really critical. And this includes your state or territory leaders' assessment of what those anticipated EQIP or CSP workloads are. What are some of those priority concerns relative to NRCS or your conservation district staff levels? So please be clear when you're thinking about the projects that you're going to submit that it is in alignment with some of those priority and needs, conservation priority and needs in your area. The second criteria here, again, another heavy point, 40 points, because this is also one of the critical areas that evaluators will be looking at in your proposal. And that's the strength and clarity of your plan to, one, advance equity and environmental justice within your respective communities. I cannot stress enough how important it is for both NRCS and NACD. And so evaluators will be looking at your proposal to see how you're incorporating that in your project plan. Also looking at the impact of your project on tribal and historically underserved producers, and that kind of go hand in hand with the first point that I just make. And then the strength and clarity of your plan to develop or strengthen partnerships or conduct outreach, or enroll new and historically underserved producers in NRCS programs. Other criteria here, when Chessa walked through the portal, she showed some of the targets and metrics that are required for you to complete. So you will be evaluated on the feasibility of those different metrics and the ability to advance NRCS programs or increase participation, again, in participation of historically underserved producers. If you've had a grant with us previously, a TA grant with us previously, we'll take that into consideration as well. But if you've not had a TA grant with us, this wouldn't apply to you. And then we'll look at the budget as well, the cost effectiveness, your source of match, making sure that you're in compliance, making sure that you're adding costs that are or expenses that are allowable and not some of those unallowable costs. And as I mentioned before, dig into the RFP. You'll find more details in there on costs that are allowable or not allowable, and more details on what's required in the budget. Next slide, Chessa. Here's another requirement for eligibility, and this is you are required to submit a statement on equity and environmental justice. And this is to include how you broadly explain equity and environmental justice to your community, looking at the organization's stance or core beliefs on equity and environmental justice. So what are those core principles that drive your work in this space? Also, what are your organizational commitment and how does this relate to your mission, or how does it embody your day-to-day work? So that's important for you to answer those questions. I believe, Chessa, you showed that earlier on when you were going through the website, through the portal. If you have a current statement or plan, you can upload that in the system, but please do go ahead, and if you have to update it, do so before uploading. And then the second piece here is that you have to include or discuss your local conservation priorities and how those projects would fulfill your community needs. So under this, then your narrative would be addressing the scope of the project, potential risk, any mitigation plan that you might have to address those risks or to mitigate those risks, the environmental and social benefits that Chessa also mentioned when going through the portal. This should also address why and what type of technical assistance is needed in your communities, and how those needs fit within then the context of your long range or the district's long range strategic plan. So again, these are required for eligibility. So the system will not allow you to skip past these two. Chessa, next slide, please. All right, so this is just a screenshot of our website. So when you go to the link that you're seeing here, nacd.org 24 TA, you will find more information, the request for proposal, the RFP is on this website, along with other information like frequently asked questions you'll find it here as well. If you don't remember this link, if you don't remember, just go to nacdnet.org. And if you look at what we do, you'll see technical assistance. If you hover over that, you'll see not just the 2024, but previous TA grants, but go ahead and click on the 2024 and you'll land on this page. But Chessa, I believe, already included the link in the chat. So feel free to open it, feel free to save it, or again, reach out to us if you can't find it. We're happy to help. And I'm including our contact information here. Chessa is our main point of contact for this program, so please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. But I did also include my contact information and Dr. Staley's contact information, who is our equity and outreach program analyst. And so if you have any questions on some of those environmental justice or equity diversity portions when you're completing your application, please do feel free to reach out to Dr. Staley. All right, we'll open it up for questions. I believe we do have some in the chat already, but we'll also open up if you have any questions or comments. Now would be the time to go ahead and ask those. Do you see a hand raise? Urban Ag? Sorry, I can't see all the name. If you unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Thank you. Even though I see 3 people in the comments earlier than me, but I decided to raise hand. Sorry, guys. I am Urban Agriculture Program Coordinator at Anchorage Soil and Water Conservation District. Nice to meet you. My name is Shuing. And thank you, Chessa, for your email the other day too. I have 3 questions. So the first one is about the granting information on section 2. What's the cap per the district or the states if they existing, right?
Are you asking the max amount that you can apply for?
Yes.
We did not include a min or max for this one. I think it's really going to be up to the states as they're reviewing the applications and understanding the priorities and the needs to maybe have those discussions and make those decisions. But we did not include a min or a max amount that you can request.
Okay, thank you. And second question is about the local priority needs targeted outreach, 1,000 words maximum statements on the application. So it specified that we have to include the assessment on number historically underserved producers in our communities. And the link attached to that is the census from 2017. And as we know, the newest census is 2022. Is there a reason that why it's 2017, not the 22?
So USDA usually rolls out the census information over time. So a lot of it is probably not available, especially when we're talking about county level data. It might not currently be available. Usually they start with the high level national data rollout. And so if you do go on the website and those 2022 is available, then feel free to use those numbers. But I'm not quite sure where they are in that process yet of rolling out the 22 census data.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. And one more last question. Sorry, I'm asking so much.
No, that's fine. Go
On
ahead.
the budget section, as Tessa showed us about EQIP and CSP funds and quota funds and dollar amount to type in to our application, right? So does it mean that we will guesstimate how many customers we might get during this 13 months period and guess what the practice code they're gonna apply for, how to help our customers, and then guessing how many acreage per how many production, so how much the reimbursement for EQIP, for example, they earn? Is that the dollar amount we should put in, or how to calculate that? I didn't understand very well about that part.
I'm gonna punt this one over to Chessa, but hopefully it is more of an educated guess that you're using and not a random number. I think just it's also taking into consideration your capacity to serve X number of farmers. So thinking about that. And so, yeah, just not randomly estimating the number of producers in this case, but maybe based on other factors. Chessa, do you want to add to that? Because I might not be answering that question well.
The numbers you're going to enter there are for your staff time. So if you're looking at, you think you're going to spend 50% of your time working on equip, you're going to put whatever your hourly rate is times half a year of hours. This isn't for cost share, so you don't have to worry about what practice code it is or how much that practice is. This is strictly for helping producers get enrolled in the program, not actually providing the cost share for that.
Oh, okay. So that's our ends on our efforts, how much we are going to promote that. It's not how much they get reimbursed out of that EQIP code.
Yep.
Oh, that makes sense because I thought, oh my gosh, I have to already know how many people I can get through this, and I have to know how much acreage they have already, but that's not the requirement on the application yet.
Right. It's for the planning process and promotion of programs.
That makes sense more. Thank you so much.
And we just want to stress just working with maybe NRCS or your state associations when you're coming up with project and project plan too. Thanks for answering, Chessa.
Yeah, thank you. So that's going to be the NRCS Office of the State. In my case, Alaska. Okay, understand. Thank you so much.
This is why we have Chessa on board.
There's a couple questions in the chat too. The first one's about the board succession planning. The state association is the applicant. When they do their succession plan and the demographic survey, are they surveying all of the local boards where the employee that's employed under this program is, or are they looking at the entire state board?
Tessa, I'm gonna answer, but please do feel free to add to anything I might be missing. But in the RFP, when you dig into the RFP, what we do ask in the RFP is that this applies to the lead organization. So if you're the state association applying, it applies, but also any sub-awardees under this program. So in this case, you'll have to involve the districts that you're working with. So in this case, both the lead and the districts that you're working with.
The next question is about the DEI plan. Also, are the costs to develop the plan eligible expenses? I believe we discussed that in the RFP, but I'm trying to find exactly where we have that.
I believe in the RFP, Jen, I see you came on camera. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, because I was just going to say it's a bit of a nuanced answer, because in some cases, I think you see in the RFP that developing a DEI plan or board succession plan can be match contribution. So in that case, if this is an ongoing effort that you're already funding and you're supplying it as match, then you can't double count it, right? So we wouldn't be able to fund those sorts of efforts using grant funding. You know, the focus and the goal of the outreach and technical assistance grants is, as Tanisha and Chessa were saying earlier, to get producers enrolled and such. So to the extent that your DEI plan, let's assume that it's not being, you know, counted as match, right? And then to the extent that it is talking about, or the sections that talk about how you might better serve clients and work with communities and things like that, that part of it can be funded through the grant. But we do want to be careful about using this sort of grant funding for purely internal operations, right? We always want to make sure that there's that clear outcome and impact on farm bill enrollment, getting conservation on the ground, and so on. So as you are contemplating how it might, you know, if you are looking at a DEI plan as one of your options, and as you're contemplating what it means to fund that, feel free to reach out to the team, because there are so many different sort of scenarios that we can help you work through that. And even if so, estimate like what percentage could be grant funded potentially. So I hope that's helpful. I know that's not the clearest answer, but we're glad to work through that discussion with you.
Thanks, Jen. Chessa, what's the next question we have in there?
Cameron, I'll reach out to you directly about setting up a time to go through your questions. And that was the last question in the chat.
Cameron, question. Okay, yes. Just for folks who might not see the question, Chessa, if you don't mind just reading out, because it might apply to others as well.
Next question. We get to choose what percentage of the grant we put towards EQIP, CSP, and CODA. Yes, you get to choose what percentage of your grant is billed to each category when you build your budget template. We might negotiate that, and when we get to the award process, depending on what the availability is of funding. But to start with, you get to choose.
There's a question here. Will applications be accepted from districts that have not previously requested a TA? Yes. This is open to all, whether you've had a previous TA grant with us or not. Is there a maximum number of grants awarded per state? And then can a TA grant be used to provide TA staff to 2 districts? Chessa, do you want to take that?
Let me reread the question again.
The first part of it, is there a maximum number of grants awarded per state? I think that's just dependent on funding. Right. So we can't determine that upfront. It just depends on the number of applications that come in, as well as the amount of funding that is allocated.
And a TA grant can be used for multiple staff under one agreement. If you're funding staff in two different areas or two different offices under a similar agreement. We've had regional applications come in that funded multiple positions. Just how you word it in your grant. There is a question when you get towards the end in the environmental and social outcomes, it'll ask you how many districts work is taking place in, or if it's a whole state project. If it's you select the whole state, it's going to ask for additional details.
Jen, I see you unmuted. Do you have something you wanted to add to that question?
No, I think you guys covered it, but I was going to say it might be helpful to kind of address Megan's and Jill's at the same time, since it's sort of like a process and a little bit related. So Jill, I think when your note, when last year when there were insufficient funds, you gave state leadership a number to work with and allowed them to make decisions regarding the allocation of those funds. Do you plan to use the same approach this year rather than previous years when you funded proposals by rankings? So I'll try to help address that one, as well as I think, Megan, this gets to your question as well. But each year, there's only a certain amount of funding that we have available, as Kanisha had just mentioned. And so unfortunately, that leaves us in a scenario where there's often more of like a higher number for the requests than there is available funding. And so in order to make sure that there is equity across the states and territories, and what NACD will do, once we get the rankings, we kind of go through, all 50 or plus, right, states and territories with the top choices until basically that funding runs out. And that way we can make sure that, we're looking across the board and, folks are kind of getting those top priorities at least. And you can kind of see where that falls until the funding runs out. And so similarly, Jill, I think we're always open to feedback. But for us, we felt like that still is the best way to do it, because otherwise, some folks had asked if we could do something more regional, but that leaves states negotiating with each other. And I'm not sure that that's the preference either. And so what we'll do again this year is that we'll still give states, we want to be really transparent with the process, with the rankings and where we are in terms of funding. So if a state feels like, they need to massage some of those priorities, we definitely want to make sure that they have the leeway to do that. As Kanisha and Chessa had mentioned, it's so important that this program is locally led, and by allowing the states to make those decisions rather than NACD trying to make those decisions, that's how we're really trying to respect that. And so I think, Megan, that kind of gets to your question. It's like, no, there's not really a maximum number. It really keeps going nationally until, funds run out. And then, yes, and I think Chessa answered your second question as well. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thanks, Jen. Jessica, your question is around the demographic survey and whether staff, all organization staff are required to respond. All staff employed by the organization and not just those listed receiving funding through this grant. Yes, all staff employed by the organization. Let's see, which one did we miss? Julie had a question on the PDF. Yes, there are some screenshots in the PDF in the PowerPoint that we did not show. Chessa had skipped over those screenshots, but once we upload this to the website, you'll be able to see the screenshots. Let's see. Is there any other question that I'm missing? Is the demographic study for employees or CD, the demographic survey for employees or CD board members? Chessa, can you just confirm?
It was for both.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, did we miss any questions as we were running down the line? So there's a question here on the organization type to select in the system.
When you're registering in the system, it's going to ask you what type of government or agency you are. you can select other, or you can select government, county government, depending on how you're set up. For our purposes, it really doesn't matter what you select. We're going to look to see if you're an eligible applicant.
And then there's a question here, Chessa, on the demographic reporting and whether it applies to contractors or just employees and board.
Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but it applies to anyone associated with the TA program, correct?
It is just, no, contractors aren't, it's not covering contractors, just the employees and the board.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, and we do recognize while this requirement is out there, there's always the point in the survey that says, prefer not to say. So there are certain aspects that respect everyone's preferences within. So, but we don't need it to apply to contractors or volunteers that are not board members.
All right, I think we covered every question that we had in the chat. Are there any additional questions or comments that anyone has? Feel free to add them to the chat, or you could just unmute yourself and ask or make your comment. And if there are no other questions, we'll just give it a second in case someone is typing your question or comment. But if there are no other questions or comments, thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today for this webinar. Again, the link is in the chat to our website where you can find all our information on the TA 2024 grant. If you're working through your application and you have any questions with the system or otherwise, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to support you with this process. And that's all I got. Thank you so much, everyone.